The object of Taxi Chronicles is to allow real riders with real stories, share their experience and enhance your life. So sit back and enjoy the journey. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we're honoured to have Ivy in the house. And Ivy is a lawyer. You know what, I'm going to let Ivy talk about what she does for a living and where she's on the route, the journey she took to get here. So nice to have you here today, Ivy.
Hi, nice to be here. What a fun experience this is.
Okay, so tell us, what is your role and what's a typical day for you?
Okay, so I'm a commodity associate in a price reporting group. So my typical day is like I'll start my day checking my emails and making calls, whether it's to governments or traders or exporters or shippers, just to see what trades and bids have gone on in the shipping market for the day. I'll check my notes of the day before, I'll check the exchange rate. So we set the global price for shipping freight. So I do, my commodity is shipping. I've done a bit of like agriculture, like the price of rice before, but I do mostly shipping freights. You also check the price of like oil and bunkering, different laws and the weather. And you see all through the day, you see what's going on. And at like a 4:30 cutoff point, which is market close, you use all these factors to determine the global price of a certain freight for the day.
So how did you get into that industry?
So yeah, it's more shipping found me. I know it sounds weird, but so I'm Nigerian. I started off doing law in the University of Manchester. I did law and politics, and then I moved back home to Nigeria for 2 years, where I was qualified as a lawyer back home in Nigeria, and then I worked at an energy law firm, and it was at that law firm I was doing energy law, like oil and gas. And then I saw the shipping team, and I had seen some of their cases, and I thought it would be really interesting. So I went to the managing partner and asked him if I could try shipping, and he's like, as long as I can manage my workload, I should go for it. So then I became a maritime litigator. So I started going to court for shipping cases. And then a few months into that, I realized that I actually enjoy the shipping more than the law. And
Okay.
just really randomly, I think one of my supervisors at the time just made a random comment being like, there are more fun, easier ways to be in this industry. Like just after a long day at court, she just made a comment passing, and I was like, oh, why don't I go commercially into shipping? And then I returned to the UK and I did my master's in international shipping law. Then I worked in Portugal. Well, the pandemic meant I had to work remotely in London, but I was meant to live in Portugal for a year. I was working for a company called EDP, a Portuguese energy company, and then I just ended up back in London doing shipping. So yeah.
Okay, so you've done a lot. You jet setting, but you also grab opportunities by the head, which
Yeah.
is really, really good. What qualifications do you need to have to be in the industry you're in?
So shipping is not a really big open industry. It's very historically white male, white old male, So it's not really about qualifications. It's just the entry. Once you're in, you're in. You get offers, you talk to a lot of people. But I don't know if I didn't do law. I think law exposed me to shipping. So I feel like if you're interested in commodities, I know there are quite a few people who work in finance. Like let's say if you work in a bank that does trading, you might, get some exposure. But mine was really through law, but I know a lot of people have economics backgrounds, but I don't think there's one specific way. It's really just, whatever you're doing, see what skills you have that are transferable. Let's say, okay, you want to go into commodity, coming from an energy background might be good, or something that has to do with communicating with people, something numerical if you understand numbers and how to like read things, if you're good with like meeting people and talking. These are all skills you can play up. So it's not as straightforward like, okay, to be a lawyer you just have to study law. It's not that straightforward, but it's definitely doable.
Going back to the commodities, how is it decided the price on things?
Okay, so again, it depends on the commodity. So oil is pretty transparent because it's massive, it's everywhere. So oil would be like on a trading desk, and you see people all over the world bidding, making bids, putting offers, and making trades. And the idea is that the price is above a bid, below an offer, and somewhere around a trade. So obviously you get a million of those every day, and also you're talking to your sources. And as a market specialist, if someone gives you a price that's way too high, you're gonna know that there's no way this is that. So that's oil, because it's a lot transparent. It's on like the global exchange and everything. Shipping is more of a reclusive market. You're talking to very like old established sources, so it's a lot more like, calling people, talking to people, building relationships, and sometimes having to physically travel to the different ports just to get an idea of what's going on. And then from a baseline knowledge of the market, and again, it's the same principle: bids, offers, trades, and see what the market is doing. You have to look at the weather. And for shipping, obviously oil benchmarks it, because obviously the ships run on oil, so you have to look at the oil market as well. So if the shipping market's not clear, you look at the underlying markets and factors. You look at supply and demand. Like during the COVID pandemic, why was your Amazon order taking like 5 weeks to get to you? It's because there was a shortage of containers. So stuff like that. So I find it very interesting because it ties down into a lot of people's day to day without realizing.
When you say you go to the country to see what's going on, what are you looking at? Because it sounds like that's quite hands-on, that section.
Yeah, but it's not like a day to day thing. So you have like international shipping conferences and different things like that. You have like client engagement. So maybe like at least once a quarter, you might go for a conference, or you might go. Let's say there's a ship owner who has a fleet of 15 massive Panamaxes, like just massive ships, which go from China to the coast of Africa or Southern America. That's their route, and he invites you to go, see his fleet, talk about his costs, see what's going on, so you have like a better understanding of what's going on in the market. Stuff like that. So that wouldn't determine price, but that would help you get an idea of what's going on. And sometimes, because shipping is like an older, more established market, it's nice to put a face to the name when you're dealing with these kind of people. So go meet them, meet their company, go and see the government, see what the government is doing in the industry. Really helps you establish yourself as a main competitor, or the dominant force in the market, if they know who you are.
You sound very professional. That also sound like you know your stuff. But what I'm curious is that because you look very young, and I have to say to the audience, she looks very young. If anyone's looking for a wife, you marry her, and you're gonna get a wife that looks good for many years to come. But no, on a serious note, how do you get these people to take? Do you have any issues where people are taking you seriously or things like that?
Fortunately, I have not had those issues in the sense that I guess you're taking it seriously as you present yourself. And I think, again, my legal background, I'm really good at speaking. Like I know how to talk to a room. And also I think just being like an international student for most of my life, I don't really get uncomfortable easily. I can walk into a room and I will have a conversation. I think also it sometimes, I don't know, it could work as a negative, but it hasn't yet. But being young African and black in a old white male industry kind of makes me stand out very, very easily, and it has worked to my benefit in the sense that I'm memorable. Because again, you walk into a room and like, oh, where are you from? Like, oh, I'm Nigerian, I'm 26, blah blah. I'm like, oh, literally the same question, how did you get into this? Like, it's very easy to be noticeable, but again, it just means you have to be a bit confident and stuff.
So from that, they're impressed from that you got into the industry, and they hear your story, they remember you, and then they think, and when they hear you talk about what you're doing and you know what you're talking about, you're kind of marked in a sense of, okay, we can do business.
I don't know, I feel like if you back yourself, like you're taking it seriously as you back yourself. And unfortunately for me, I work with some really great people as well who like I'm not put down or anything like that, or the sort, so I've had no reason to like shrink myself.
Do you think being Nigerian has helped you in the sense that you're dealing with a continent where a lot of the natural resources come from anyway?
Yes, I think being Nigerian probably gives me perspective in the sense that like I'm born and raised in Nigeria. I've lived there and I've lived here. I'm comfortable with different lines of thoughts and different ways of thinking. I don't know if that makes sense. Like if you like, let's say I know you do a lot of talk with investors into Africa. Like I know how crazy doing business in Africa can be. Like I know you have to be a bit smart on your feet. You have to know how to exactly. So I feel like in that sense, being Nigeria kind of gives me a wider scope of thinking, that I can bring to work in that sense.
And you can understand the issues that can cause to delay shipping as
Exactly,
well. And
exactly.
politics.
Exactly. Stuff like that.
Okay. It's interesting. I used to work on the ships.
Really?
I used to work on the ships, stopping the pirates hijacking the vessels.
No, that's really cool.
So it's container,
Stuff like
oils, bulk carriers, things like that. So it's interesting what you're having to say in regards to your industry. What have you learned that you wish you knew when you had started?
That simply having the grades and just being smart that's just the beginning. Like it's really just, again, being able to advocate for yourself and put yourself first. Like understanding that you can do everything right, but if you're not the one promoting yourself, I've gotten a lot more comfortable saying exactly what I want, like obviously in like a polite, professional manner. But if someone asks you, oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What salary do you want? What do you think of the role? Where would you like to be in a company? Don't just kind of like smile and be polite and assume your work would speak for itself. You should, you get a lot more. I feel like also just as a woman, you don't, sometimes, especially as a black woman, you don't want to come off as, a bit too strong. But, I've kind of learned to let go of that. Say what you want, say what your expectations are, and work towards it, especially when you're young, because worst case scenario, they'll say no. So, I don't lose anything, I only stand to gain.
They won't fire you.
Yeah.
But if you can justify why you believe that you should get something.
Exactly.
That's a different kettle of fish.
Exactly. So, even when I started this job, because obviously you have to, if you set a price, you do get some traders, especially traders, because obviously it affects their business if you set a low price, calling you up and getting angry, being like, what is this price? This price is too low, and stuff like that. And your manager, if they don't know why you set, they would ask you, why did you set this price? And the first time I was a bit intimidated, and I was like, oh, should I correct it? And she's like, no, I'm not asking you to correct it. I'm asking you to tell me why, defend your standpoint. And then I explained it to her, and she's like, oh yeah, she thinks I'm absolutely right. But my initial reaction was just to run and correct it. And she's like, no, if you have to be confident in what you're doing, and trust in yourself that you understand what you're doing, or fail quickly as well. If you're gonna make a mistake, get over it and get moving, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very refreshing listening to you because your life skills can be applied to many other things in life.
Definitely.
And it's always empower what you're saying and defend what you're saying in that respect. That's okay. Talk about the future. What does the future hold for you?
Ooh, I'm not fully sure, but there are a few ways it can go. I can go full-time into trading. I can go work for a shipping house. I can stay in what I'm doing. I don't know. I've just found that just staying open-minded and networking, and when the right opportunity comes, always give it a shot. So I don't know exactly. I just know I think it's gonna be good. That's all I can say. Just, taking it one day at a time, and just, best foot forward and seeing where I end up, really.
I have to ask, what do your parents do? And the reason why I ask this, because it's always interesting to see the influences that people get.
Yeah, of course. So my parents live back home in Nigeria. It's mostly just, my brother's doing university here, but it's mostly just me in London. So my dad's an engineer. He has an engineer firm and a few other things that he does with my granddad and stuff like that. My mom works in education, so she has a charity for children back over Nigeria, and then a widow's trust fund. So my mom, when I was younger, my mom had a school, so my mom was actually my first teacher and stuff like that.
Okay, that was good. So were you favourite in the class?
No, actually, my mom didn't like me being in her class because I'll just do whatever I wanted because it was my mom. So
Really?
Yeah, I was just kind of
Okay.
Because she said I would learn quickly because obviously I'll be at home with her. So rather than learning in class, I'll just start mucking about because if I already kind of know it, because I see her making the things at home for the class.
Okay, so you're. Okay, that's an interesting. That sounds like another episode on its own. In that respect.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of get bored and then just start interrupting. So she's like, no, she would give me other teachers that I didn't already know their work.
Fair enough. And that's where we have the lovely Ibi that we have today, the educated striving forward. You've been a great guest, Ibby.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, this has been so fun. This is definitely the highlight of my day.
At Taxi Chronicles, we believe in sharing a gift. You have just done that because you've spoke about your experience, your journey of life, from more or less the beginning to the end, or to present, I should say. But what I will ask you as a final question is, if you had, based on your experience, if you had to give the world one word of advice, one sentence of advice, I should say, what would you give based on your experience of life so far?
I kind of touched on it already, but it links to the whole fail quickly thing, like do it afraid. So I used to get like bad anxiety and like just overthink things, and just kind of learning that fear and bravery don't exist in a vacuum. They can exist at the same time. Like you can be scared to try something or scared to fail and do it anyway. So kind of learning how to work with parallels rather than it just being, just two options, black and white. It's like you can do both. You can be afraid and succeeding at the same time. That would be the main thing.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that, and we wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.